The new modulations in Tonex sound great, they really do. And with a little MIDI controller like this one, you can turn on and off not just one, but 4 effects in one preset. So what you just heard was one preset, and I'm turning on 4 different effects and turning them off with just this. And here's the killer. Not only that, whatever preset I choose, I've got the same 4 effects. Now I can either have the effects and leave them as stock, or I can program parameters for each effect into here and repeat the same ones in each preset. Let's have a look at how I do it. Now it's not perfect, and it could be better, and there's some things that IK could do to make this a little bit easier, but I'll explain that later on and the problems that you may come across. But let's have a look at how you actually program this thing in the first place. You can do this with all sorts of MIDI devices, but I'm using the M-VAVE Chocolate, which is that one, and to make it work you need a MIDI cable, and in this case you need a little jack to MIDI cable, and there's 2 kinds, just to make it simple. So I got that one, that's the boss one, and you need type 1, because some genius made 2 of them. So that goes into there, and then that end goes into your Tonex, okay? However, I'm going to program this on my desktop just because it's easier, and it's much easier to show you on the desktop editor. So in this case, I'm just going to take my USB cable, pop my USB cable into the back of there, and I'm connected to my computer. So you need to download from M-VAVE, their Cube Suite, and when you do, it looks like this. Now, I will warn you, it's not an English company, it's not a British company, it's not a British speaking company, it's a Chinese company, and some of the translation is sketchy. I'll be polite, it's sketchy. But the basics are, when you first get it, it's in this state. So you can see here half of the screen's grayed out, and what happens is in this section you decide how you want this thing to operate, or how you want each button to operate. What we need to look at is the advanced custom mode, which is this. So you select that there, and you can see I've got some bits in there already. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain to you how it's done, and you can see exactly what's happening. Now, the buttons in this can do 2 things at once almost. So it can do one thing when you press it once, it can do something else when you press it again. And there's a few options for the way that works. Now, if you look in this panel here, you can choose foot switch A, B, C, or D. And then the stampede mode. You see what I mean about the English? In the stampede mode, you can have a herd of hippopotami running over the hill towards you. What we need to be able to do is to turn the modulation block on with one press, and with the same press tell it which modulation effect we want as well. Then we need to be able to press the same button again to turn the modulation block off. We need to repeat that process for all of those buttons, but with a different effect. So with our controller plugged in with a USB cable, we get a screen that looks like this. We need to change it from program change A or B and go into advanced mode. And what that will do is it will change and give us access to this side of the screen, like that. Then we need to choose which foot switch we're going to operate on at a time. Let's go for foot switch 1. And you've got 2 things that can happen, remember, on each pedal. So the first press will do bank A, and the second press will do bank B. So whatever's in A happens on the first press, and whatever's in B happens on the second press. Now, I've already got a few bits in here because mine's programmed already, but I'm going to show you what I've done. So on foot switch 1 or A, I've got 2 controllers, 2 things happening. The first one is this. Now, there are 16 MIDI channels. We're going to operate on MIDI channel 1 all the time. Everything we do is on MIDI channel 1. We need to make sure our Tonex can receive on MIDI channel 1, and that our chocolate is sending on MIDI channel 1. The Tonex is set to receive on every channel simultaneously when you get it out of the box, so you shouldn't need to do anything with that. That's fine. Now, there are more than one kind of MIDI message we can send. We can send a PC, which is a program change, so it's just a patch on your Tonex. We can send a control change, which is the one we're interested in. We can send notes on and off. We don't really need to do that for this. And then we've got custom MIDI code, etc. Don't need to worry about that. What we're worrying about is CC or control change. Each control change does something and will control a thing that the Tonex can do. So we're interested in turning the modulation block off. So as it happens, controller 32 turns the modulation block on and off. To turn it on and off, you need to give it a command. And the command is in this number here, or this number here, this data 2. We're going to give it one of two things. It's either going to be a 0 or a 127. 127 is the maximum MIDI number. 127 in this case will turn it on, and a 0 will turn off. But remember, we're in our A block, so we want to turn on. So we need to send a 127. So, quick recap. We're in channel 1, we're staying in channel 1. We'll send a control change, and we're only dealing with control change data at the minute. 32 is your modulation block turning on with your 127 on command. In bank B, that's our second hit of the button, we're going to turn the modulation block off. So, channel 1, control change, 32, and we set that to 0. Now, I've got a second command in this A bank, and that second command is going to decide which of the modulation effects we're going to turn on. In this case, it's going to be chorus. So the control change number that we want to send is 33, and that tells it we're dealing with the type of effect, and chorus is number 0. So 33 is the controller telling us which thing we're changing, and in this case it's the type of modulation, and the data 2 there tells us which one, or makes us decide which one. And in this case it's going to be 0, which is chorus. Okay, so now we're set. Our first press of that A button will turn on our modulation block and give us chorus. Our second hit will turn off the block. Same thing for footswitch B. We've got CC32 on 127 to turn modulation block on, and in bank B, CC32 on 0 to turn it off. But this time on control change 33, we are sending a 2. Now a 2 will give us a different effect. Now if you look in the manual, a 2 will give us a phaser. Just there, phaser. Footswitch 3 or C. 33 is on 3, which gives us a flanger. Button 4, control change 33, is on rotary, which is number 4. Now, because I wasn't happy with the speed and the width on the rotary stock settings, I wanted to change that. I've used other control changes here that let me change the width and let me change the speed. So, if you look on the manual, let's zip down to where we rotary. The spread and the speed are 53 and 55. 53 and 55, I've changed them. Now 63, so I've set those parameters to be different to what they are as stock. Every time I use this, it's going to send that command, and they're always going to be what I want them to be. So the parameters are not stored in Tonex anymore for those things. I'm storing them in here, and this will change them every time I hit that block and turn that on in Tonex, which is really, really powerful because it means I can change any parameter in any of the modulation blocks and store it in here, and it's going to be the same every time I call it up on whatever patch I want to call it up on. Okay, so you can go through and you can put in every parameter you want, or you can just use the stock ones. And to be fair, the stock ones are pretty decent. If you're just using one effect, then you can save it and bake it into your preset. But with this, you can choose your effect and you can choose exactly where you want all the knobs and dials on each one to be set. And you're saving it in here and not in your Tonex. That means when you go to another patch in your Tonex, you can have the same effects with exactly the same settings. Cool. So now all I've got to do is press those buttons respectively. So I've got chorus, I've got something else, tremolo, I can't remember what I did. But I've got all those things programmed onto there, and all I do is turn them on and off. Now, there is a caveat and a couple of things that you've got to be aware of, because it's not perfect. What happens is, when you program that to go on, remember we set it to do two things. So a second press is what you need to turn it off. So if you turn that on, and then forget to turn it off, but turn something else on, and it will turn it on, you've left this button in its B state, ready to fire that off signal. So if you turn your chorus on there, and then you turn your rotary speaker on there, you can then turn your rotary speaker off. But if you want to turn your chorus on again, and you hit that again, and you haven't turned it off, it will send the off signal. So it'll look like nothing's happened, and you'll have to hit it again. Okay, so when you're using this, you've got to be very, very aware that you turn off what you turn on. Okay, and there's no indicators on this. There's no scribble strips, there's no screen or anything like that. So if you're going to use this, I mean, to be fair, it's only 30 quid. If you're going to use this for those effects, what I would do is I would get a bit of tape, I would stick some tape on there, and I would write with a felt tip pen on there exactly what each of those effects were, and I'd leave it at that. Okay, so it does work well. If IK had done it slightly differently, and rather than having a controller to turn the block on, then had a one to turn each individual effect on. So, for instance, you go to chorus and it turns the block on and into chorus, and then you turn it off, or you go to your next one, it would have done that. But we've put that extra layer in there of turning the block on first and then selecting the module within it. If it had just gone straight to that module, that module, that module, or that effect, and that effect, then that might have been easier. Whether that's possible with the way they set things up, I don't know. So I'm not going to criticize, but that is the little glitch in the system, if you like. There are lots of other things you can do with this, and there will be more videos on it, but have a go at that. Try it. Tell me if you think it's useful. Let me know how you get on in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, cheers.